We've been talking a lot on our shows here of late about some of the challenges that the Israeli Defense Forces have, that the Israeli government has, and the difficulty that some of the issues that are facing them right now are some of their own worst. And they have been their own worst enemies, and they have caused some of their own problems, and they've got a lot of challenges. We've looked a lot, especially at the civilian casualties that have been caused, and how some of that is causing Israel a problem, maintaining Western support and also preventing the war from escalating beyond. But I want to zero in today a little bit on another deep dive so that you understand a little bit more about how challenging this is for the Israeli government and the Israeli people because of the Hamas factor. Now, many people, especially of late, have been focusing more on the plight of the Palestinian people. We have as well. That's one of the key things that I'm most concerned about, is the innocent civilians on both sides of this line. But we also need to not take our eyes too much off of Hamas itself, because they are a real problem here that is incredibly difficult to navigate. Because look, it's not as though that Israel can just say, okay, look, we're going to just have a negotiations here. We're going to try to be more careful on our targeted operations here, so we'll have less civilian casualties, in large part because Hamas doesn't want that to happen, and they're doing everything in their power to make sure that doesn't happen. Israel has actually been doing a fair amount on trying to get the civilian population in the city of Gaza to flee to other areas and go out. They've many times said, hey, move out, because we're going to be coming into this area hard, and we want you to leave. And many of them have, some allegedly somewhere close to 1 million people have relocated, but there is still somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 Palestinians still in the northern part of the Gaza, many of whom have been expressly prohibited from leaving by Hamas themselves. Now, Hamas oftentimes want to view themselves as freedom fighters and that they're fighting for the Palestinian people. But let's take a look. Are they really fighting for the Palestinian people? And do they really value the Palestinian people? Let's take a look at some key comments by some of their senior leaders, and then let's dig a little bit deeper behind some of these comments. So first of all, let's see what they say when they're talking about the Palestinian people. There's 2 million of them living in the Gaza Strip, as has been commonly referred to, often on the news media. Let's see what they think about the Palestinian people.
How did you feel when you watched that? Your own fighters, your own people doing that to innocent civilians. Were you ashamed?
No, I feel proud that our Palestinian people, for 75 years under Israeli occupation, did not surrender, did not raise the white flag, and still fighting Israel.
Okay, that was actually how they're viewing the Israeli civilians. Don't even care. Yeah, we're proud to having slaughtered civilians at a concert or to go into their houses. He's proud of it. He's not in the least bit surprised. But now let's see what that same guy has to say about his own people.
Dear sister, nations are not easily liberated. The Russians sacrificed 30 million people in World War II in order to liberate it from Hitler's attack. The Vietnamese sacrificed 3.5 million people until they defeated the Americans. Afghanistan sacrificed millions of martyrs to defeat the USSR and then the US. The Algerian people sacrificed 6 million martyrs over 130 years. The Palestinian people are just like any other nation. No nation is liberated without sacrifices.
Now, can you imagine if you're a Palestinian civilian who just wants to live, who just wants to have a life and a possibility of a hope and a future for your family? And this is the guy who is your political leadership. He's saying, hey, man, look, the Soviet Union had to sacrifice millions to get their victory, and listed all these other countries that had to sacrifice millions. You've only got 2 million total population in the Gaza Strip. And a number of others in the West Bank. But this is the guy who's leading you, that he's saying, hey, and he keeps using that term millions. Millions had to be sacrificed. So he doesn't value you at all. He's not fighting for you. It's not really clear what he's fighting for, but he's definitely doesn't have the needs and the help of the Palestinian people, because if he gets these kind of casualties, if he gets these kinds of losses here, there won't be a Palestinian people. So that's the first thing you got to understand of what Israel is having to deal with, is someone with a mentality like this that doesn't value either innocent civilian life in Israel or innocent lives of his own people. He's actually holding them in somewhat more disrespect and disregard than even Israel is being accused of in their attacks and the way that they're going further south. Now, unfortunately, that's not the end of it. So there's one more quote from this guy when he was in that same interview we had a minute ago. Well, I'll let you see for yourself.
That I'm asking about the hostages. I'm asking about your captors, Mr. Michel.
Please, Dominic, please. Western media talks about being objective, but you have to apply them, honestly. Like you apply them to Rwanda, genocide was there. Netanyahu is committing genocide. Our cause is a cause of liberation.
Yeah, so look, it's the same story so many times that we see around here. It depends on your point of view, what you call either a freedom fighter or a terrorist. Now, of course, we're calling the Hamas people terrorists because they did commit terrorist acts. With that, I mean, there's nothing, you can't hide what they did on October 7th. Whatever Israel has done and needs to be addressed, and those things remain on the table. October 7th was not even a military. If the Hamas fighters had broken through the gates and gone after the IDF and the military targets, they would at least have more plausibility to say, hey, this was a military attack and we're trying to fight for the behalf of the people. But they didn't. And look, you've seen a lot in public open sources about just how brutal some of these Hamas fighters did to the civilians in Israel. And I can tell you from talking to a colleague that I have who has access to classified material, apparently it was much worse than what has even been allowed to be out in public so far. And what we've seen has been horrific. But apparently there was a number of Palestinian terrorists who went out not just to kill civilians, but to do it in the most horrific way, knowing that that's going to spawn intense hatred and a vast desire for revenge on the Israeli side that would probably cause them to go in too heavy and to cause civilian casualties on their own people. And that is what Israel is dealing with. And that's why this is so challenging, because there's, in what we might call rational thought, there's not any on the Hamas side. They're willing to sacrifice their own lives. They're the people that they're allegedly put in charge of to help and to govern and to lead. They don't even care about their own lives. And you heard it from his own mouth. You heard it from the leader's own mouth. And oh, by the way, where was that leader making those very bold comments from? First of all, let's take a look at who these people are that are paying the price for his for the Hamas leaders, bold and brash statements and confident, competent statements. Gary, show us some of those Palestinian civilians that we've been seeing. These are the people here you're seeing on screen right now. Those the fathers, husbands, grandfathers, children for their parents. I mean, it's just been horrific. And yes, we can say that a lot of this is probably over too much response from the Israeli side, but it's also, and maybe even more so, that Hamas leaders like this guy here are putting them directly in the line of fire. They prevent them from leaving. They want this kinds of scenes of carnage. All these things you've been seeing on your screen that we're showing right now. This is the objective of Hamas. You need to understand what we're dealing with here is that these people are again, from my colleague who's in the intelligence community, says, look, these guys are worse than ISIS. As bad as ISIS was, and they beheaded people online and did all kinds of terrible stuff. But he said that that's child's play compared to what these guys are doing. And we can talk a lot more about how we got to this stage, and we will actually on this channel. We're going to continue to do that because that is vitally important. But now then, Pandora's box has been opened, and there's this horrible situation going on there. And look, as I alluded to a second ago, let's see where this brave person is actually making these comments from. Gary, if you could bring that map up there. That one right there. So you see the Gaza Strip up in the upper left-hand corner. That's where all the carnage and destruction is going on. And then you see way over past Jordan, all the way through Saudi Arabia, in north of UAE is Qatar. And in that place, you see, now Gary, pop that other picture up there from the plane. These guys are all living in luxury hotels, and they're flying around in luxury jets. What the images or the videos that I showed you a minute ago were made from a very safe, very secure location where that guy lives in the height of luxury. And in fact, I've read some reports earlier today that the Qatari government actually likes to position themselves as playing the middleman. They're like, okay, look, we have these Hamas leaders, and I'm not making this up, literally blocks away from where American air bases are. I actually spent 4 months doing duty in Qatar during my active duty times in the headquarters there at Al Udeid Air Base. Apparently, some of these Hamas guys are literally blocks away, being housed by the Qatari government in the lap of luxury. That's how these guys live. Now, if they were, making these kind of comments from within the rubble, and that they were sharing the sacrifice of their people, maybe then, at least from their perspective, their people could say, well, he's sharing the dangers here. But this is pathetic, because these guys are not willing to take any of the risk or sacrifice that they're asking and imposing upon their own people. And that just so underscores the incredible difficulty to find a solution to this problem, because Israel has to deal with this. You can understand a little bit more why the Israeli government and Netanyahu himself say there is no negotiation. There's not any kind of, ceasefire that's going to be put on place until we have destroyed these people, because you see that from their perspective, especially, it can't be negotiated with. You can't rationalize with this. And unfortunately, in this case, almost all they can do is either, look at it. Israel's options are either they basically surrender and say, all right, we're going to allow you to live, and we're not going to go in. We're going to keep the Gaza Strip, blocked off, which of course will keep all of those people into permanent isolation and imprisonment, even worse than it was before. Or they can continue to try to go in there and at least make any attempt to get the civilians out of the way, and then but then still have to go in to try and to destroy Hamas. And look, I'm trying to put myself in their position, and I'm just not sure what they could do in the near term. Now, I see one of our views here asking about the two-state solution. Actually, as an episode that we're in the process of getting ready right now, we're going to explore that possibility, and that is almost the only thing that has a long-term solution. But even that can't be addressed until you get these Hamas leadership off the table. Because you see, their only course is the destruction of Israel. They don't want to coexist. Now, there's some other Palestinian leaders who do, and I'm actually trying to get one of them on our show right now. That we'll wait until we get a confirmation. But he's a very highly placed Palestinian politician who very much does want a two-state solution, who very much is willing to have a coexistence with Israel and the Palestinian people. That's the only thing that offers any hope at all to the region, to the whole thing. Palestinians, Israelis, everybody in that region, the possibility of at least a peaceful coexistence. Maybe they're not in anybody's lifetime, especially because of all the things that have happened both last summer and now with this ongoing war here. Nobody's going to be friends, I don't think, for the foreseeable future. It may take a generation to get past that. But it is possible with a two-state solution to get to at least a modicum of coexistence without war, without killing one side wanting to kill the other, and vice versa. That is possible, though it's extremely difficult. And unfortunately, I can't see any way out of the current situation in the near term where Israel feels obligated to destroy the leadership of Hamas. And I remain emphatically supportive of the Palestinian people and of the United States and other countries doing everything we can to protect the Palestinian people, to get them more aid, to get them any kind of protection so that Hamas can be taken off the table, so that the Palestinian people can then do the hard work of negotiating to actually get a two-state solution, which Israeli governments for decades have said they wanted to do. U.S. government says it wants to do. Biden has been outspoken and continuing it. Secretary of State Blinken continues to say two-state solution, because they recognize that no matter how abhorrent that is to many in Israel right now, how hard it's going to be to get, it's the only path to end the bloodshed and the nonstop cycle of violence that both have against the other. So that's something that's going to have to be negotiated. But before we can get to that hard part, this near-term situation with Hamas has got to be completed. And short of them surrendering, I'm just not sure how that's going to end anytime soon, because nobody could expect the Israeli government. None of the 6 million Israelis would support any government who said, all right, yeah, we're just going to try to work with Hamas again. I just don't see how they can do that and stay in power. And the Palestinians, of course, they don't have any choice in the matter. They don't get to say, we're going to get rid of Hamas and we're going to expel them. They don't have the power to do that, because only Hamas has the weapons to do that. And the bottom line to this episode here, I just want you to understand just how incredibly complex and how there are no good solutions here, folks. There's none. That's the harsh truth. We talk about here on this channel, we're unafraid and unintimidated. And this is why we're telling you the truth, because I'd like to be able to tell you there's a path here that's going to be over, in any kind of relative term of soon, and that it can be done with less and less bloodshed. I'm desperately looking for any even suggestions toward that end that I could offer, and I can't come up with any. This is going to have to play out in some awful, horrible way that's going to serve nobody's interest. But until it gets to an end, only then can we start talking about a permanent solution that has to center on some version of a two-state solution, or this will be a perpetual problem for indefinitely, decades into the future. And so for Israel's own sake, no matter how much they don't want to, they have to look at a two-state solution if they ever want to live in peace. And if the Palestinian people ever are going to get a chance to actually live in peace and freedom. And that's all we have for you on the dive today on this subject. But come back, because at 3:00 we're going to have another live show looking at something from the American perspective on the future of our armed forces. We're in the process of doing some modernizations and some other things that are going to try to keep us safe into the future. And I want to look at that in a little bit more depth. It's been in the news here recently, and how much money they're looking to have. And I want to know, are we on the right path? Is this something that's going to keep us safe, or are there some rocks hidden under the water here that we need to watch out so we don't wreck the ship of state, as it were? So be sure and like and subscribe and tell your friends. And we'd love to see you this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks, and see you next time.